Hello, YouTube. Hello. So, here's what we're going to be doing today. The update for Thronefall just dropped, right? July 9th. That's when I'm recording this. And hopefully, it gets released the same day. But anyway, what's going to happen is the update's out, and I've got a few videos in the pipeline. So, I'm going to finish the Eternal Trials run that I'm currently on, and then I'm going to start the next one with the new patch. So there'll be a few videos with the old patch on, and I'll make sure in the description it's the older patch. But anyway, this is update 1.7, and so here's what they're doing, right? Progression system. So your weapons, your mutators, building upgrades are unlocked by completing campaign levels. No longer, it's no longer you're getting a weapon as you level up. You're just getting the perks, right? And they've removed the level cap, so there's no more content to unlock after you've gotten all the perks, right? But you get a trophy after each level cap. So it's kind of like, hey, you're level 500. I guess you've played this game for a while. I guess that's what it is. Anyway, on the Discord, people talk about more and more perks, right? And so here's what we're going to do. They're going to increase the number of perks you can pick from 3 to 5, right? This allows more complex and creative strategies, as well from taking the later stages of the game more accessible for casual players. Also, something really big, and I think they probably realized this after they saw the tier list videos and a whole lot of discussion that generated from the Discord. There is a big opportunity cost to perks when there's only 3. When you only have 3 perks, and it's like, okay, well, I really need an economy upgrade just to get me started. Well, I need a DPS upgrade. Or, hey, I wanna play this style, right? But now now that's 3 perks already, right? Why would you ever take Ice Magic when it's incredibly niche, right? It only goes against fast enemies, so there's only a few levels where that would actually be good, right? Or you'd have to upgrade into ballistas to use Ice Magic, and it's like there's not a lot of slow sources, so it's like, why would you ever pick that one? And so then it's kind of like a non-ever, you don't ever pick it. And that kind of feels bad for Ice Magic. It's like, well, why do you even exist in the game, right? It sucks. And there's other perks where it's like, these are really, really good and I should always take them, right? Commander mode is a huge DPS increase. That's 2 free blacksmith upgrades, right? For everything that's not the hero, right? Yeah, the hero's damage is weaker, but if you build your defenses properly and you put your units in the right place, maybe they can take care of it, right? But it's like, or trample, right? You take the hero, you run over everything, you back off and you heal up, and then you run back in, right? And it's like, well, where's the room for, the niche perks, right? Why can't I take anti-air telescopes? I think there's going to be a wave of like air units coming, right? Okay, well, what do I take instead? Oh, there's only 3, but now there's 5. So it's like the game was balanced before around having just the 3 perks. But now that there's 5, right, you can go deeper into certain strategies, niche perks. Well, there's less of an opportunity cost to that, right? Now, I don't think this means people are going to pick Ice Magic every round, but it feels better to diversify and branch out your strategy and try something a bit different. And with 5 different combinations, right, there's so much more. Now I'm thinking what I might do is there's a few strategies I'm thinking of now that there's 5 perks, and I might just go deep into a specific strategy, because you could do the full healing strategy, right? With every single healing perk, that's 3. You take trample, right? And then you take something else, right? I'm not quite sure, but the whole and I think you take like ring, right? And you just run in, trample everything, run back. And you can only really do that in Eternal Trials, but now with the 5 perks, you can do that on normal levels as well. That sounds pretty fun, right? So yeah, there's a whole lot of different things to think about with just having 5 perks, right? And that's a really cool change, I think. Right, balancing changes, player units, perks and upgrades have been tweaked in an attempt to improve the overall balance. Full list of balance changes, check on the balance patch notes at the bottom of the post. Okay, we'll get to that in a bit. Eternal Trial Season 3, right? While we won't have regular recurring seasons in the traditional sense, we're adopting the model to allow for bigger balance changes, such as this one. Eternal Trial save file and high score have been archived. Everybody can start with a clean slate. If you'd like to finish your existing Season 2 run, you should be able to roll back to the previous version of the game, right? Okay. Yeah, no, I'm pretty much done with my existing Season 2 run. Yeah, so I don't need to do this. But yeah, implement another request, adding more of the new buildings to older maps in Eternal Trials. So this won't affect your campaign, which I think is kind of, a good change, because early, like in the first level, if you're inundated with all these new buildings and it's like, well, what do I build? What do I do? Right? But it's like you're kind of drip fed and you kind of learn the game, right? But in Eternal Trials, you've learned the game already. You've been through all of them, right? And it's like, okay, well, I know what these do. So, what's stopping me from building this and using it? And also, Eternal Trials sort of became a game of, can I find one of two maps? Can I find Sturmclimb or Wildbach? Because those had tools to deal with the massive amounts of waves, right? Before the first 10 rounds, you could kind of pick whatever you wanted, right? But once you got into the double digits, you needed one of those two maps to pretty much be successful. Maybe you go on Ulferwind, maybe on Frostsea, but most of the time you would never want to be on Durstein or Nordfels, because there was like no tools, right? Like on Frostsea, there's a blacksmith at least, right? And if you have your Architects Council, you can get walls on tier 2, right? And you can turtle from that, and you can defend and hold it. And then there's heroes and a blacksmith on Ulferwind, right? And then Sturmclimb has the shrines. And the shrines, I think, are the most important. I think in Eternal Trials, everyone should have shrines, but I don't know. Maybe that makes the shrine perk too good. But anyway, I don't know where exactly everything is, right? So we'll have to explore that in the new season. All right, new tutorial and tip system. Tutorial's been reworked, okay, to include some quality of life features. A tip system that essentially continues the tutorial after by teaching you some more advanced features, okay. How to select only an individual unit type using a smart command hotkey. Okay, that seems pretty neat. So if you complete the tutorial, receive a series of tips. All right. Seamless UI scaling. All right, so it's you can make things bigger, smaller. I get it. Full release is next. Okay. So yeah, on the Discord, the devs have also been talking about their release schedule and how they don't want to keep adding things that people are talking about in the Discord, even though it sounds like a great idea. They're like, we just want to get this released, right? And I think it's both good and bad, right? It's bad for the players, like, oh, we don't get to see this new feature, but it's also good for the developer because they've got a plan, they're sticking to it, and honestly, that's what DLC is for, right? Those ideas you couldn't really get in your initial development cycle. And I think they're actually doing a smart thing by finishing the project, right? And then after the reception, either continue working on it or go back to it or whatever, right? Biggest thing we're lacking for release, some more content. Okay, we'll leave early access later this year. All right. Okay, that sounds good. There won't be any major updates until then, but we plan to celebrate 2 or 3 extra maps on launch day. So what is it, July? End of this year. Well, later this year. So let's say it releases in December. That's 6 months. Okay. Always our priority to be transparent. Okay, we'll actually show that we don't plan to roll out any additional content after the official release. So we're going to be on patch 1.7 until the official release. Yep. Okay, so here's the patch notes. Fire Archers. All right. Pretty strong unit. Very good against AoE. The only real thing that they don't do well against is flying units, but there's not too many, right? So it's like you got witches, bloodwings, wasps, and bombers. I think that's it, right? And it's like, well, for everything else, there's Fire Archers. All right, so health reduced to 20, down from 30. Okay. So yeah, so they're going to have less health. Okay. So they're going to be more fragile. So don't let the flails near your line, ever. Movement speed reduced to 3.5, down from 5. Okay, so they're also going to be slower. So better initial positioning, I think, is so much more important. Damage against fast enemies reduced by 50%. I kind of see where they're going with it, because they're good against like everything. And it's like, well, if they're fast, they're going to run out of the fire anyway. But this kind of hurts it, because what you would do is you would put your wall up, and then your fast enemies would go up against the wall, and then they'd still hit in the fire. Or you would have like a Sturmclaw with the Caltrops wall meat grinder, right? They'd run over the Caltrops, get really slow, and they would just take so much damage from the fire. But now they're taking 50% less damage. I'm pretty sure we're going to notice that. And that's going to suck. But it only against fast enemies. So what? That's Banelings, Hunterlings, horses. Yeah, okay, it'll suck. But I guess when it comes to that, you're just going to have to use different tools. It can't just be, hey, we're going to do fire archers and we're going to put them behind walls and we're going to have a good time. There has to be more thought put into it now. Fire archers should remain equally useful in most situations while giving them more pronounced drawbacks. Yeah, okay. Hunter, minus 15% damage against non-monsters. I thought they already had that. Huh. Okay, well, whatever. Damage against monsters remains unchanged. A small but probably necessary nerf. Okay, so yeah. Basically, it's not, oh, we see a few waves of monsters, let's bring out hunters. It's like, well, there's like 3 waves of monsters, but that's it. The rest are going to be, regular units. So we probably need our longbows or crossbows. Or fire archers. Damage bonus against ranged units increased to 125%, up from plus 100. Okay, so instead of dealing double damage, it's more than double damage against ranged units. Okay. And ranged units, that's stuff like giraffe slimes, bows. Yeah. Health increased to 45, up from 35. So they're going to be tankier. Range increased to 21, up from 13. All right. And I think with the archer, what's it called? The archer skills, right? The little target with an arrow sticking out of it, that perk, that's going to be even bigger range because it's 60% of that. So, all right. So that's like an extra 12-ish range. Okay, so hopefully better fulfilling its role as your ancient range unit. Okay, so I think this just applies to our crossbows and not the enemy crossbows. I think the enemy crossbows still have their shorter range, but all right. Health increased to 25, up from 15. Okay, so longbows have more health than the fire archers now. Damage against humanoid enemies increased by 60%. Okay, so now it's, hey, I'm seeing a lot of flails, I'm seeing a lot of spears, I'm seeing a lot of I think ogres count as humanoid, right? Because they don't count as monsters. But yeah, let's get our longbows. Okay. I can see that. Because a lot of the time it's like, well, I'm going to go for hunters instead of longbows. Or I'm going to go for fire archers because I need AoE. All right, spears. Movement speed increased to 9.5, so they move faster. Attack range increased to 5.5. So yeah, they can poke through walls. Overall damage increased by 10%. Damage against fast enemies increased to 100%. They do double damage against fast enemies. So when you see your hunterlings, you see those horses, right? Get the spears and just have them poke them. Okay. Health increased to 66. It's already a good niche, but it's too weak to shine compared to other options. Yeah, I do feel like they were niche, right? I just hope that like with these buffs, they don't become like the all-purpose unit, Berserker has 2 seconds of invulnerability after performing the jump. Okay, I can dig it. Additional fire and explosion resistance not only takes 15% damage from your explosions and 25% damage from fire. So, what damage types? So banelings explode, and witches do fire damage. Okay. All right, so it's not like you want to use them to counter witches, but they can, I guess, tank witches better. And the invulnerability after performing a jump is pretty good, because let's say you have 8 berserkers and they jump on a baneling and the baneling explodes like immediately because they all jumped on it. Well, if they all have those iframes, then they live and then they go back to where they were or whatever. And then when the next baneling comes, like that's really good, because what they do is they target siege units, and banelings count as siege units. And when they first released the jump, it was really bad when you played against banelings. Really bad, because they would jump in, right? and they would kill the baneling, but then they would die to the explosion. It was awful. And I think on Discord they were saying, hey, this feels bad, can we get some explosion resistance? And the devs were like, yeah, okay, we can try that. And they did. They gave some resistance, and now I guess they increased the resistance, so that's pretty good. And they gave it iframes, and this could also help against ogres, right? So you've got the jump on the ogres, right? You've got your iframes. The ogres are swinging their club, and they do 0 damage, right? And they kind of attack slow. So, like, I think that's pretty good too. Okay, so towers, armor tower, shield duration increased to 6.5 seconds, up from 5. I kind of felt that this was in a pretty good spot anyway, but I guess the devs felt differently, and they're like, okay, let's give it a buff. Maybe it's because you only get one shield, right? And it's possible for like a mortar to shoot just a random arrow and then proc the shield, and then now it's got no defense. But they did have increased health compared to other towers. I don't know. Maybe it's a bit too strong now. I don't know. Bunkers, attack speed decline when enemies are out of range, reduced by 60%, making it easier to retain a high rate of fire. I actually didn't realize the bunkers lost their attack speed when they weren't attacking. I thought they kept it. So, I don't know. I'm not sure about this change. Sure, it's a buff, but it's like, I don't know if I'll ever notice it. Maybe I will. Maybe I will. Snipers, targeting changed to focus on the unit with the highest max health instead of current health. This is to ensure it actually finishes enemies off instead of just leaving each of them wounded. So this is actually interesting because you've got high health things like rams and ogres. And I guess with the sniper towers, what they were doing is they would hurt them. And then when they got really low, they didn't finish them off. And they went and attacked something else because something else had more health than the ogre. But the ogre had the high damage, and so it wasn't getting finished off. So I don't know if I'll notice that either, but I guess that's how the towers work now. Let's see. Oil towers, projectile splash increased by 50%. All right, so better AoE. Healing Spire, strength bonus increased to 110%. Projectile speed increased by 50%. Okay, so better heals, and they shoot heals faster. That's pretty good because there's times when like you're low and then you die and the orb is traveling, right? And it's like, well, that sucks. Okay, weapons, big sword change. Active ability is no longer directional, but deals splash damage in a large circular area around the player. All right, so before it was like a cleave effect where there was a little cone in front of where the horse was facing, and then that's where it would go, right? And if you were surrounded, it wouldn't hit everything. It would just hit the cone. Right. This is a big buff to the area of effect, right? So now it's just a circle around you. So you could be running away and press the button and still do damage, right? Passive health and health regeneration bonus increased to plus 30%. All right. So you also want to be a big melee guy. You're going to run in, right? You're going to hit them with your big sword, and they're going to hurt you, and then you're going to run off, and then you're going to have faster healing so you can get back to the fight more. And I think with weapons like the sword, the falchion, the lance, those are all the melee weapons, right? They all have some form of healing, right? The falchion, if you kill an enemy, you heal, right? That's pretty good. The lance, you press your button and then you heal, right? Sword, it's not like those where you get like the big chunk of heal, but your health regeneration bonus is increased. So when you're out of combat and then your regeneration starts. There is a lot of synergy with sword and the magic armor, right? Because that also increases your health and your health regen, right? And the health perks as well. So I think I might do a run with all like health perks on the sword. See how that works. Let's see, the magic book. Passive damage per shot decreased by 50%. Okay, so your initial shots are weaker. Auto attack cooldown is reduced to 1.3 seconds. So you attack faster, right? But each shot is weaker. Active ability damage increased by 50%. So it's like, okay, I'm going to apply the dots. We can apply the dots faster now because our attack speed is faster. But the initial damage of the little magic is weaker. So it's not like, hey, I'm gonna hit them and keep attacking the same target. It's I'm gonna attack a whole bunch of different targets, apply all my dots, press the button, do the big damage. All right. Keep the power level of the weapon roughly the same while making the active ability more interesting and useful. So we're gonna see bigger chunks of damage when we press the button. All right. So the traps, Falchion now automatically prefers monster targets when in range. Okay, that's interesting. So if you've got a group of like slimes and spears, it's gonna hit the slimes instead of the spears, right? Or like what's another thing? Like a swordsman and slimes, right? I was gonna say swordsman and spiders, but the spiders are gonna run away faster than the swords anyway. But you see what I'm saying, right? So when they're in a big group like that, it's gonna hit the monster targets. I kind of like that because it's the burst of the 3 attacks, and then there's a cooldown. That's pretty big. And with those 3 attacks, if you want to maximize your DPS, you want to be hitting the monsters because you do bonus damage to the monsters, right? But if you miss because you're targeting the humanoid unit, right, you're missing damage. So that's kind of nice. All right, Magic Staff. Active ability area effect increased by 20%, so a bigger circle, and damage increased by 10%. So better bombs, I guess. And I think the radius for the trap from Falchion and Traps was the same as Lightning Staff, but now this is increased area by 20%, so it's going to be bigger than a trap. And I'm going to have to look at some of the choke points in the game and see how that stacks up, because I think for some of the thinner choke points, it's going to cover like the whole thing, and that's going to be pretty neat. Okay, Castle Center, Magic Armor, all right. Really good one, especially in Eternal Trials when you've got the other synergies with the healing stuff, right? So let's see what they did. Damage reflection against melee enemies reduced to 1 from 3.3. And damage reflection against ranged enemies is increased to 7. This is pretty big. This is pretty big. Give me a second to get the words in. So when you've got trample and this, and you run up against the melee stuff, right? And you're just trampling, right? And then they damage you back, right? And then they're getting hurt. Before they would take 3 damage. Now they're taking 1. And so when you're running into a melee group, all your damage is basically going to be from your trample. It's going to be nothing. It's going to be 1, right? Now I think you can still utilize this, right? Because you run in, you get low, run out, heal up, run in, run out, right? And you're basically using your health bar as another damage source, which is still a neat thing, but it's going to be harder against melee clusters. But damage reflection against ranged enemies increased to 7. That's huge. That's huge. So when you've got the archer line firing at you, the giraffe spitting at you, the crossbows hitting you, they're going to die faster. And so running through the lines with your trample and your magic armor on is going to feel so much better because they're going to hit you as you're running towards them, right? And then they're going to miss, or the projectiles are going to get disjointed as you're running away. But as you're running towards them, they're still taking damage. Before they were taking 3 damage, now they're going to take 7, right? It's going to be huge. You're going to notice it when you run through the lines. Okay, Builder's Guild immediately upgrades one of your houses in addition to the existing benefits. So you build your houses, you do your Builder's Guild, boom, instant, extra gold, and then every night afterward. And I think it also gives you a 50% health bonus, or not health bonus, healing bonus. So it's neat. I think for most situations, if you're doing Eternal Trials, you're probably going to want magic armor or like castle, or not castle up. You're gonna want magic armor or assassin's training or the raw stats of 75% damage and health. But I think this is a neat one, right? And I think a lot of newer players think this one's so strong because it gives you money. And yeah, it does help with your money, but it doesn't help with any of your damage. And I think there's other ways to make money. But hey, yeah, this is pretty neat. So Castle Up discounts all tower and wall upgrades for the entire match by 1, and level 2 upgrades by 4. Okay. Wait, did I read that right? Okay, yeah. So From going from tower tier 1, right, to build it is 3. And to go to tier 2, it's 5. Right? So that's an 8 gold investment. But with this, if you build the initial one, it's 3. And then it's going to be 4 instead of 5 for tier 2. And 11 instead of 15 for tier 3. Okay. And since it happens for the entire match, you don't have to time this. So it's not like, okay, I build on my towers first, and now I castle up. It's, I castled up. And this actually helped in Eternal Trials because there were times when you didn't have Architects Council, so you didn't have the tier 3 locations, right? But now, and those tier 3 locations wouldn't benefit from your castle up because you couldn't build them, you know? So this is neat. I'm not sure how much I like it compared to the other one, but I think it's easier to play with this one because you buy it, you get all your discounts. Okay, Godly Curse. I never picked this, to be honest. I never did. Effect replace. The first time your character attacks an enemy, it loses 25% of its max health. This keeps the role of the upgrade unchanged, but it makes it a bit more versatile. Okay. So, and they say exact numbers will likely more tweaking, but 25% of its max health. So not current health, but max health. So if you fight ogres, it's going to be more effective because it's going to do a big old chunk. If you're going to fight, lower health spiders, it's going to do a little chunk as well. But if you see their health bar, really low and you haven't attacked them yet, when you attack them, they're going to die instantly. So this is interesting. I don't know if I would pick it over Castle Up or the other one, but I might have to play with this a bit more before I make a judgment, but I don't know. Blacksmith melee damage bonus increased to 25% per upgrade, up from 20%. Okay. So this changes some of the calculations for commander mode because, like I said, commander mode is basically two upgrades. Well, now for your melee, it's not 2 upgrades anymore, but it's still a lot. 40% is still a lot. And the perk is a 35%. So instead of a 1.5 blacksmith upgrades, it's 1.25 or something like that. But yeah. They're still pretty good, but I guess they figured there's not a lot of melee and compared to ranged, and people were just picking ranged more often. And so now we'll make this more enticing because now they'll be stronger than their range. So I can kind of see the thing. Wind Spirits plus 50% attack speed. So I think the mill, when you upgrade to a Wind Spirit, it'll shoot out a little ice ball, right? And that will slow down enemies when it hits them and do some damage. And so I think they're going to make it attack faster. Okay. Temple. All right. A lot of changes to the temple I see. And I would only pick 1 or 2. I think I would pick the shrine one if I wanted to charge them, or I would pick the blessing when I had trample, because it would scale with the trample damage and just run over things and instantly kill them. All right, so sacrifice. Level 1 unit respawn speed increased to 250%. So this is where all of your units die, and then there's faster training times. Level 2 unit respawn speed increased to 275%. I still don't know if we want to take this because it kills all of your units, and it's like if you had your it's 4, 8, and then 12 because that increases by 4. So if you have 12 footmen, they all die. What's the training? Even though your training time is, let's say, an extra 275%, right? How long is it going to take for you to get those 12 guys back, right? And then when they do come back, they're going to be trickling in and they won't be that big united front. I don't think this is going to be good. I think it's better than it was before, but I still don't think it's going to be good because it kills all your guys. And I think this would be incredibly situational to realize, hey, now's a good time or not. Overload tower health reduction speed reduced by 50% for the temples 2 and 3. Okay, so your towers will stay alive longer to be able to, deal damage. I still didn't take this one too much because my towers, I didn't want to I didn't want to get into a situation where the night's gone on long enough and then the towers died. And I think the one or two times I actually did it in Eternal Trials, I almost died. So I don't know. Maybe this will be better. All right, so Ice Rain, level 2 bolt damage, bolt damage increased to 40, up from 35. On level 3, increased to 60. So, right, so 20, 40, 60 damage. All right, so the bombs are getting a little bit better. Prayers, level 1 shrine range bonus increased, so it's easier to charge your shrines. Yeah, so it's easier to charge your shrines, and your shrines will have a larger attack range. All right. Wisdom, health reduction speed of all buildings decreased by 50%, so buildings will survive twice as long. Okay, so yeah, Overload and Wisdom, where they would damage your buildings, now it damages them slower. So you have more time in the level. Okay, all right, I can get that. And then no touch to blessing, because it was already the best one, right? Mutators, all right. Pray to the War Gods. This is where it would reduce the health and damage by 20%. And fun fact, the perk Telescopes reduces it by 25% for the flying units, right? And so that was better than this mutator, right? But it's incredibly niche because there's only 4 flying things. All right. Anyway, so they removed it because it caused more confusion than it did good. Right, so people were like, hey, I'm going to put all the red buttons down and I'm going to get more score. But this was the only red button where it reduced your score. Yeah. Additional perks, buffs, and other difficulty increases should make up for it. So yeah, no more easy mode. Turtle God, all right. Enemies have 60% more health, down from 75%. So a little bit easier, all right. Elites, every 4th spawn is elite, down from every 3rd. And score bonuses increased. Okay. So Elites was probably one of the toughest mutators. I think it was the toughest. And if you added this with other mutators, you couldn't really do it. But okay. So this is for like the high score hunters, right? No towers pack now allows you to build towers, but they're very expensive. And no units allows you to build units, but they're very expensive. Okay. And if you want to do both, you can play it for extra score. Okay. Challenge the Chaos. All spawned enemies have an additional delay of 5 seconds before they can perform their first attack to prevent them from instantly taking down economy when spawning next to them. Okay, yeah, so Chaos God was where it would randomly just spawn on the map. And there were times when stuff would just spawn right next to your mill and you had no reaction time to get it. But now it's, okay, you got 5 seconds, right? We're going to spawn. Now here's 5 seconds. So take care of us before we come out, and then now we're instantly destroy your economy. I don't know how long the delay should be, but the delay being there is a good thing, right? I don't know if 5 seconds is enough or if it's too much. I don't know. This is stuff we'll have to look into. Challenge the Phoenix God. So this is where the units would heal every second, kind of like the health potions perk, but yeah, limits the amount of healing to an enemy to a maximum of 15 per second to avoid ridiculous regen speeds for very high health enemies. Okay, so stuff like the robots were basically unkillable when I played that. There was a challenge with like the Phoenix God on Ulferwind, and I could never kill these robots, and I had to. This was a while back. I don't even think I streamed it or whatever, but it was awful, and I felt like nothing I did hurt, and then I had to like go really deep into DPS perks just to even touch them. Now that there's a max amount, so if you get more than, so you're gonna need like, more than 15 DPS, right, to counter it, which I think that's doable, right? And it'll be easier as you upgrade, and maybe you take your castle perk for 75% damage. Maybe you get your blacksmith upgrades, right, for everything. All right, so this should be more manageable. So campaign change. So the desert level, enemy count in the first and second wave decrease so that you can more easily beat them without the correct counters. For the first and second wave, those were horses, I think. Okay. All right. Eternal Trials. Okay, this is what I've been looking for. Season 3 starts. High score reset due to massive amounts of balance changes. All right, makes sense. Spiky giraffes, difficulty budget increased by 10%. Okay, so what they mean by difficulty budget, so each enemy has a little number called difficulty budget. The higher the number means the more difficult it is to kill, right? And so if the number is higher, it's going to use up more points. So let's say theoretically, the level has 100 points to distribute throughout the waves, right? Well, and let's say peasants were like half a point, right? You could put it in 200 peasants, right? And like that's how difficult it would be. Or let's say the spiky giraffe was 10. Well, now you can only have 10 spiky giraffes for that 100. You see what I'm saying? Now, I don't know what the exact numbers are or how they calculate it, but basically, if there's a higher difficulty budget for the enemy, they will spawn less often. Not less often, I should say. When they do spawn, there will be less of them. So the giant waves of, 100 spiky giraffes, right? And then there's 5 different angles and there's 20 of them each, right? And it's like, well, now that's kind of toned down. Maybe there's like 17 of them or 15 of them. And those are more manageable, especially when you get to stuff like spiky giraffes, because when they get into that big concave, they do enormous DPS, right? And when they're all focused. Big spider, difficulty budget increased. Yeah, those were so annoying, especially when you get to the elite big ones. And it felt like you needed hunters just to kill them. That's crazy. Let's see, Thronefall. So that's the first map. Added 6 shrines, a blacksmith. Okay, so there's no temple and no hero blacksmith, but this is good, right? I don't think they need every single building on every single map, but give them tools, right? I think every map should have shrines, right? Because those, I think, are a very versatile tool, and you can charge them up, and then it kind of changes the focus of, hey, we want to fight near the shrine, right? And it's like a consistent DPS that you don't really lose if you choose to fight near the shrine, right? So if you can corral them towards the shrine, it's not like they can kill it and then you lose all the damage, right? Because if you build a tower and then they kill the tower, even if you're corralling them to the tower area, now the tower is doing no damage. But with a shrine, different, right? And Thronefall is a small map, and I think there's 6 shrines. I need to see the locations, but I think a lot of them are going to have overlap. This is going to be pretty neat. A blacksmith to the map, so you can start scaling your units. So stuff like ranged attacks, that's going to be pretty good. I also need to see the location for the blacksmith, because if it's in a vulnerable spot, maybe you're going to need that relentless research perk, right? So desert level, 5 shrines, blacksmith, temple, and a royal forge. So that they got all of them, which kind of makes sense because it's pretty big map. There's places to put stuff. All right, Frosty, 5 shrines, 2 hero quarters, and a temple. Hey, wait a minute, 2 heroes. So we can get a lizard blizzard. We can get a wizard, and golem, right? You can get the firewing, and oh my goodness, there's so many things. All right, I also need to see the locations. And then Uferwind, 5 shrines for Eternal Trials. Yeah, so all this stuff is for Eternal Trials only, these extra buildings, but I think it's going to be nice. Perks, Treasure Hunter, 15, 25, 40 gold in the last 3 waves. So they did get a buff. In the tier list video, I already rated it pretty high because it's a pretty good hedge. And I still think it's a pretty good perk, especially if you're still learning the game and like you're trying to determine your power level and when you should go for big economy turns, or when you should go straight for defense, or if you're fighting things that are way stronger than you're used to and you're going to need to build more defenses or whatever, right? Like this really helps, right? 15 gold on wave 8. That's 15 gold is a tier 3 tower, right? Or 3 tier 2s. That's pretty good, right? 25, yeah. So more gold. I think the other economy perks, I think Pumpkin Field still gives you more, I think. If there's enough mills and you have them up. Loan, okay. So first 10 gold, drop by items disappear. No real big change, right? Because loan, you still want it because it's a free tier 2, right? Free tier 2 is so good on Eternal Trials. So you would still kind of want it. but early on, maybe you kind of pass over it. Maybe not. Trample, what did they do? Damage to enemies reduced. Self-inflicted damage increased. No worries, the perk is still very strong. So, slight tweaking to the damage numbers. This doesn't kill the thing, because I don't see any change to scaling. And scaling is what makes Warhorse so good, right? You get a melee damage, or you get like a melee damage perk. You get the blessing from your temple. You get blacksmith upgrades, and you just run through lines, and it's so good, right? And I think there's videos on my channel where I'm going up against a whole bunch of elite like slimes or something, or I think it was elite peasants, and I had the 200% damage from the blessing, and I ran through all the elite peasants and killed them in like half a second. And then I ran to the other side and I killed it. Yeah, and it's so Warhorse still really good perk. Also, there's no adjustment to the 20% speed increase. I find that really good. So yeah, it's still really good. I guess it's just by itself, it's less good, but you were still comboing it with everything, right? And it still scales with Daredevil, right? Maximum damage bonus increased. Okay, so Daredevil buff. Auto attack reduces your auto attack cooldown by 33%, previously 25%. Okay, so yeah, this is better than before. I think that makes it in line with a hero blacksmith upgrade. I have to double check. It feels like that's the right number though. Melee damage increased to 35%, up from 30. Okay, so yeah, that's melee damage perk is better. Interest, the amount of gold received is rounded up instead of down. Okay. So if you have 4 coins in your chest, you will receive 2 instead of 1, but your interest is now capped to a maximum of plus 20 per night. What? What did you do? Okay. I get it. I get it now. Okay. All right. So if you have 4 coins in your chest, you will receive 2 instead of 1. Okay. So before, when I was doing calculation, okay, I've got 4 gold. I could build 2 houses, get 2 gold, or I could just sit on interest and get 1. Well, now it rounds up. So 4, 5, and 6 are all the same gold, right? 7, 8, 9, they're all the same gold. 10, 11, 12, all the same gold, right? All right. But your interest is capped at 20 gold per night. So if you have 60 gold in your chest, you're not going to get more than 20. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I'll have to play more with it. It'll definitely affect high scores. All right, sustainable mines. Effect has been replaced. Gold mines produce 1 extra gold. When a gold mine is destroyed, its income is reset back to 7 per night. What? Okay. This perk's been changed the most, I think. I think it used to be mines were invincible. Now it's mines have more health. And now it's, well, they don't have more health. But if they die, they get reset to 7 per night. This is an interesting idea on paper. I don't know how in practice, right? But like, let's say you do your double mines. And then... Actually, I think this would help on Wildbach because there's that mine that's in a really, vulnerable position. But it's less vulnerable if they just come in from the south and not from the north. So on the waves where they come in from the south, right, you take care of it. Oh, hey, I get my 7 gold back, right? And then the one time they come in from the north, oh no, they've killed the mine with their giraffe spit, right? And then next round, right, okay, now I'm back to 7. It's interesting, but I don't know. Gladiator School. The unit respawn bar can now fill up while the units are still alive on top of your existing benefits. Okay. This is a good change. So, you know how I said before, if they kill all your units with your temple blessing and then you increase the speed, right? You're not going to come back in a group right? You're just going to come and trickle in, and that kind of sucks. Well, this is kind of a similar thing, right? Gladiator School, it did help your training speed, but like, it only started training once it died, right? And so, like, let's say you had 8 footmen and they were all holding the line. One of them dies, and now you've got 7 footmen, and then now they're holding the line. Well, now you've got to wait for your thing. But with this change, they'll start training, but they won't get released until the first one dies. And that's going to be a huge time save. And the more you tank before you die, the better it's going to be, because you'll have a one to replace it instantly, and then you just have to wait for the travel time of your unit. So better. I don't know if this makes it like S tier or whatever, but it's definitely a good change. Ice magic. Riding over enemies applies a short slow. Wait. I think this is independent of trample. I don't think you need to take trample to make this work. On top of existing benefits. But the existing benefits, slows were 200% stronger and like double the duration. Or so, it was ridiculous, right? But it was so tough just to get a slow. But now with this change, there is a 100% chance. There is always going to be a tool that you have in your toolbox to slow an enemy, right? It's not like, oh, I need to build caltrops and then the fast enemies have to run over it, right? It's, or hey, I need to build a ballista, or I need to build a wind spirits. No, it's, okay, I want to slow these guys down. I'm going to ram into them, and then I'm going to back off, right? It's going to make kiting easier as well, I think, because you just run them over, they'll get slowed, you run back. I think, right? I haven't tested this yet. I'm going to have to. But I think when you run into spears, you will slow the spears more than they slow you, and it will be easier to escape. I think that's how that works. I'm going to have to double check on that. Emergency repairs. Health transfer speed between walls is increased by 25%. Okay, so for emergency repairs, basically, like, it would tick every so often, and every time it ticked, it would share the wall health. But if the enemy had a high DPS and they just ate through the wall, it would die before the tick happened, and it wouldn't get its heal, right? But the health transfer speed has been increased, so it'll tick faster, so they need more of a DPS to break through your wall without the heal. So, pretty good. Timber scaffolding reduces the build cost of towers by 1 on top of your existing benefits. Okay. So now towers become 2 to build instead of 1. Not instead of 1. 2 to build instead of 3. 4 to upgrade instead of 5. 14 instead of 15. That's huge. That's huge. Depending on how many towers. The more towers you build, the more you get from this. This is huge. This is huge. Like I have not tested this yet, but this is going to be huge, because it's just so much money that you're saving. If you build 10 towers, right? It's 20 gold instead of 30. You have saved 10 gold, right? That's 5 houses you could build. That's 4 interest, right? Oh my goodness. All right, scalable UI. Yeah, they talked about that meta progression. 5 perks instead of 3. Yep. Infinite. Yeah, we talked about this before. Tutorial. Minor fixes. Tweak the colors on Wildback. Okay. Physical coins in your chest cap at 200, preventing crashes caused by an overflowing chest. Fixed exploit that made it possible to change loadouts mid-run by canceling out of the restart. Tutorial tips and control rebind menus show glyphs for controller buttons instead of their names. Okay. Remove double negatives from the localization. Is just 60% slower instead of minus 60%. Yeah. Okay. Save load system for automatic backups. All right. All right. So those are the patch notes. Again, what we're going to do for the channel is we're going to finish the Eternal Trials run, because I've already got those videos released in the pipeline. They're just going to release every day at 10 a.m. And when the current run is finished, then you'll see new patch stuff. I'm going to do more Eternal Trial stuff, but I think before that, I'm going to do some experimental stuff like, hey, we're going to do a whole bunch of perk combinations, the interesting things, fun things. All right. Thank you for watching. Remember, like, comment, subscribe. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., you're going to get another video. It's going to be older patch, not this stuff, okay? But you're going to get it. All right. Bye.